Welcome to the How to Die in Mexico podcast. We help expats live better in Mexico by addressing end-of-life worries and fears with education and planning resources. I'm your host, Sarah Mae Conway, author of the book How to Die in Mexico, and you can find me at dyinginmexico.com. Today, I'm speaking with Brian, who lives off-grid in the forest of central Mexico.
I moved to a state that they warn you not to move to, but it's been the best experience of my life. And I get it partly because I don't want to be comfortable. I want to learn stuff and stretch myself.
And I live off-grid on the Mexican coast. So it really was a joy to speak with someone both about the universal concerns that we have as U.S. immigrants to Mexico, planning to stay here, live here until the very end, but also the more specific concerns around what might happen and what we need to plan for if we live in rural Mexico, perhaps far from typical city services. Trigger warning, we do briefly touch on the topic of assisted suicide in this episode, so just in case that is something that you would prefer not to hear.
My future is this forest's future. And I think it is good that you're realizing that is what really matters, is like, what did we create in our lives? What effect did we have on people? Death does not have to be sad. It's just the end of your adventure.
May this episode be of benefit. And if it is, I would very much appreciate if you would subscribe or follow, or better yet, leave a review. Well, maybe I'll just start by letting you introduce yourself. How about that?
All right. Well, my name is Brian, and I've been living in Mexico since 2004. I am from the United States, and I looked at a map of the world and I decided, where am I going to go? Where do I want to be? And because I'm pretty good at predicting the future, sort of, not in a mystical way, but just looking pragmatically at the world, I decided I'm going to go live in Mexico. And I had been in Mexico before, and I chose a place, the best place, in my opinion. And I moved here, but now it's been 21 years I've been in Mexico.
Mm.
And so I do have an interest in the topic we're going to talk about, which is dying in Mexico, because this is my home now. This is where I will enter the earth and dissipate my atoms and become part of the universe. So I'm here with who? Who are you?
Well, I'm Sarah Mae, and yeah, I'm working on putting together a guide for people just like us, perhaps, who plan to die in Mexico or who live in Mexico. And if you live here, there's a high chance you might die here. We never know what's going to happen. And so, yeah, it's like, what are some things that would be good to think about? Um, it makes me think, well, I always come to this from the reason why I chose to live here is because I wanted to live more intentionally. And so there's something about that, that, I think also necessitates, dying, or a little more intention around dying.
Mhm.
Um, and so, yeah, I'm curious, how that comes up for you. Uh, yeah, just this, like, you know, is that why you moved to Mexico? Like, to live with a little more, or I don't know, bring a little more purpose to life, a little more freedom to live how you wanna live?
Well, definitely freedom.
Yeah.
I have a lot more freedom to do what I want here, but I didn't move here to live in some kind of immigrant community or expat community. I moved to rural Mexico I moved to a state that they warn you not to move to, but it's been the best experience of my life. And I did it partly because I think if I stayed in the US, I was very successful there. I would have entered middle age and become comfortable. And I don't want to be comfortable. I want to learn stuff and stretch myself. And so moving here was a way to mess my life up, and it definitely did. Yeah, I live off grid. I live in the middle of the woods. It's been very strange. I definitely didn't move here to die, but we all die somewhere. And so I'm perfectly happy to do it here. I do love Day of the Dead, and perhaps we can talk about that. Day of the Dead is an amazing, amazing, uh, whatever it is, ritual. It's not a holiday. It's a something. It's a remembering of your ancestors. So we can talk about that maybe. But for me, it was the best choice I made in my life. And I know there's a lot of other people in the US are considering Mexico. And so maybe we can talk about that as well, because we don't just want to die in Mexico. We want to live in Mexico.
Hmm.
So why did you move here?
Yeah, well, yeah, I think I'm also in a rural community. And so for me, a big part of being in this specific community is just being in a quiet place, being closer to nature, surfing because I'm on the Pacific Coast. And yeah, and wanting to really like intention about around not just being in like a gringo bubble, an immigrant bubble, expat bubble. Um, but yeah, I mean, for me, it was like if I really wanted to live how I want to live, um, I wasn't going to be able to do that in the United States, like
Hmm.
financially. Like I could see myself like being in the United States and working my life away. And so, just to survive. And I think, if you're from the United States, you do come to Mexico with a little bit of privilege financially. Um, and so it's allowed me to actually live and not have to be working all the time just to live. Um, yeah, and then part of it is like, well, why Mexico? Because there's a lot of places in the world where you can live less expensively than the United States. Yeah, and I really found like that you know, the people in Mexico are amazing, are super, super friendly and welcoming and lovely. And you mentioned Day of the Dead. And so maybe, yeah, share a little bit more about like Day of the Dead specifically, or just what parts of the culture resonate with you.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. In general, I also find the culture very comfortable. Sense of humor is great. People are not uptight about much. It's like, let's just have a good time, have some parties, take care of the kids, eat some food. It's um it's been really like a relaxing, easy cultural transition for me. I feel more comfortable here around people than I did in the US actually. I feel like, I can just joke around and say shit and they can say shit and nothing really matters. And as far as Day of the Dead goes, I didn't know a lot about it before I got here. I had been to one Day of the Dead party in the US that a friend of mine threw, and I still didn't understand that much about it. But when I moved here, and there's a local cemetery I'll probably be buried in, and unless I make my own, and I actually just made a video about making my own cemetery that I'll be
Mhm.
buried in. But we'll talk about that later, maybe. Uh, and I attended Day of the Dead stuff, and I saw this respect for your ancestors and the memory of your ancestors. And I just really liked it. And I'm generally against like spiritual stuff and religious stuff. I grew up in that and I rejected it. But this isn't that. This is a very comfortable acceptance
Mhm.
of we die and then you get remembered. And your future life, your afterlife, is in the memories of others. And I like that a lot because I want to serve people in this life and be a good person. And that it's better than karma. Karma is a Hindu concept where what you do in this life affects your reincarnation and affects whether or you're reincarnated into a lower form or not. And that supports the caste system. It's kind of a messed up control system. This is not that. This is just you doing what you do in your life and that you live on as long as people remember you. And hopefully you did a good job and they remember you well. And so I see it as this immense form of respect for where you come from, who you come from,
Mhm.
and also a way to remember you're creating your own afterlife in their memories.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Like, as you're talking about this, it occurs to me that, like, I haven't really previously taken the view of Day of the Dead as something that's potentially soothing for me as a person who's going to die. Like, I've thought a lot about Day of the Dead as, like, perhaps, like, a grief ritual or soothing for someone who, like, knows people who have died, right? But, like, this is yeah, like, a perspective I hadn't really considered before of, like, how Day of the Dead can maybe offer, like, some comfort for us around our own deaths and how we're gonna continue or how we're gonna be remembered, you know?
I think it comes down to legacy.
Mhm.
You are crafting your life now with every day. We're doing it right now. We are sculpting our own lives. And so whatever we create now is what we ended up being. And when it ends, it's over. Your sculpture is done. Your personal artistic sculpture of sculpting your own life. And that legacy affects everybody. And so I'm sorry for the people I've hurt because I have. I've said things I shouldn't have said probably, definitely. And I've done a lot of things to help a lot of people. And I'm very proud of those. My own father talked to me as he was getting older about his legacy and how much he cares about that. And I care about my legacy. I protect a forest. That's my current project. I'm protecting a forest against becoming cut down for monoculture.
Mhm.
And that's my baby. I don't have children. I have no heirs. So my future is this forest's future. And I think it is good that you're realizing that is what really matters is like what did we create in our lives? What effect did we have on people? I mean, not that you didn't realize it before. I don't know you. But I think that's maybe all that we can do is serve well and die well.
Yeah, the legacy that imprints, you know, negative and positive that we leave behind. Um, yeah, yeah, and for me, this attention to planning for the end of life, is in large part about that. Yeah, like, about kinda I don't wanna say, like, cleaning up our mess, so to speak, but just, like, leaving cleanly. It is related to, yeah, what we leave behind, even in terms of, like, the work we might leave behind for others if we haven't planned, you know? Um,
I don't even have a will, which is
yeah.
awful. I have to have a will. And so, yes, as you write your book about, or whatever it is you write about for making pragmatic plans, I have to have a will to protect this forest. I have to put it into a land trust or find somebody I can trust because this is my baby.
Mhm.
And if I die today, which you never know, I could have a stroke or heart attack. then the forest will be cut down for monoculture, and that would be a failure. That would be my failure. So I'm not ready. And so I'm really happy you're writing this book.
Hmm. Yeah. Have you looked into what, like, yeah, the possibility of that, the possibility of forming some kind of like protections around your land, as yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not a lawyer in Mexico or anything, but I do have a nonprofit in Mexico, but it is not functional enough for me to trust it with my land. I have another nonprofit I would like to form that I could then give it to, but there would have to then be trusted people controlling the nonprofit
Hmm.
because nonprofits don't just magically exist on their own, right? They
Hmm.
have to be controlled by people who you can trust. And, you know, I have major trust issues. I don't trust anybody. So, so far, I've found no one I can give the land to. Sure, I could give it to the federal government. I could make it the 30 something largest national park in Mexico, which would be pretty small. But I don't want to trust the federal government with it. I don't trust governments. I could give it to the municipio, the county that I'm in, and that would be cool, actually, not too bad, because I know a lot of people around here. I stand out, obviously, because I look weird. So that'd be cool, but I don't know what they would do with it, and they would probably just sell it or whatever. And so essentially, I don't know who to give it to. So I think I have to create an organization that will protect the land and have people living within it. In other words, I might have to create like an intentional community of people who agree with a lot of my values. And a lot of those values are related to taking care of the earth, in particular with food forest farming, making the forest itself be super biodiverse, making it so people can live in a forest and enhance it instead of destroy it, which is what generally humans tend to do. We destroy anything we're near. So I don't know. I'm confused, to be honest, about what to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I've definitely found, when it comes to the law in Mexico, and especially when it comes to all the documents that we could potentially create around end of life planning, like what it this question of like, but who is going to be like the actual real living person that's going to advocate for these documents to be adhered to? Like it always comes down to like, but who is going to yeah, like continue on with this or make sure that that whatever's written on a legal piece of paper actually gets read or followed or paid attention to. And so um yeah, I think that's been like um somewhat scary and somewhat, like, for me, like, a fascinating challenge in a way of, like, oh, like, to make anything work in Mexico, it's really about the people that you connect to. It's not about, like, what ends up getting written down on a piece of paper. It's, like, it's connecting to actual people. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's true. And that's true for my own survival. Like I found that if you connect really well with good families here, like I know families that I've trusted for well over a decade. And if I gave my land to them, they would be tempted to sell it. But maybe if I had a really good plan for it, and maybe if I could, this is one option I have. Maybe if I could work well with them and create economic opportunities for them to use it well, I could protect it. And this is the fundamental conflict I'm in. And this is not the conflict most people are in that you're writing to. Because I have this piece of forest, right?
Mhm.
Most people just have a house or something, and their problem will be, do I want to get cremated or do I want my body to get sent back to wherever they came from or whatever. There's a lot of details around that, but that's pretty easy. But since I have this obligation to serve the forest, can I make it economically viable more than an avocado orchard?
Mhm.
That's my actual competition. Can I make my land be worth more than an avocado orchard? I don't know. Hope so.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope so too. I wonder, okay, so back to the potential of being buried on your own property, like if you how much have you looked into um, the cemetery use and the feasibility of actually moving that forward?
And so I have not looked into the law of it. And just getting me buried in one spot is a good start. That's neat, and I'll get rid of my body, rot and stuff. That's cool. But just today, I made a big long video about making a whole cemetery.
Mhm.
And it would be a cemetery focused on people who don't want their bodies shipped off to wherever they came from. Just like where I come from in the States, there was a Jewish section and a Chinese section, you know, where all the tombstones have their language on it and stuff. I could make like a world cemetery, and it could be a place that people could go and would actually be unusual. It would be a sculpture park cemetery. And so there'd be sculptures that you could be buried next to, and you could choose what sculpture, obviously, that you like that fits in with your values or something. And it would be a garden, so it'd be all nice, cool looking plants and stuff. Is any of that legal? Well, I could make it legal. I mean, I don't think there's anything stopping me from doing it. I just have to go talk to whatever government entities are in charge of that, and maybe there's a license or something. But it's a very free country here, much freer than where I come from. And there's a lot less permits and corruption than where I come from. Now, I know that there's a lot of under the table corruption that goes on, but there's not as much institutionalized corruption. And
Mhm.
so if I say I want to make I mean, I have a big forest here. So if I say I want to make, 5 acres of cemetery and make a cool park thing, and I plan for, how I open it and don't, and probably wall it in to protect a little bit, and it's gonna bring in this many people and affect the roads in this way. If I make a good plan, I don't think anybody's gonna say no.
Yeah, well, that's nice to hear. I at least like around here. So in the state I'm in, obviously, well, I don't know if it's obvious or not, but you can't be buried on your own private property. There needs to be like, yeah, you need to be in a permitted cemetery. And, it's super rural, and there's a lot of ranches out here that are, like, way off on their own, in the middle of nowhere, so to speak, and they all have their own, family burial plots, which have been permitted by the state. So, yeah, it's like, I think especially for people that are interested in green burial, not being encased in a ton of cement. That there's perhaps some potential in, yeah, being buried in one of these rural cemeteries where the officials aren't necessarily gonna come and check if you're
Right.
being
So, so, so,
buried in
so
cement
there,
or
there-
not.
there's there is legal precedent where you're at to do what you want,
Mhm,
and so that can get figured out. I mean, and if I did this cemetery correctly, other people could copy me. You could
mhm,
copy me. I mean, and I love the idea of it being a sculpture park because where I come from, death is very sterile and sad. You got your boring ass lawn and your tombstones, and nobody goes there to enjoy it or party or anything. There's no Day of the Dead. I mean, Day of the Dead's actually a happy event. It's not somber. It's not people sitting around graves crying and stuff. It's like it's joyous, and there's children playing around, and you're giving gifts to your ancestors on their altar. That's beautiful. That's the way we should deal with death. And so I would love to create something that other people just copied anywhere in the world. Doesn't have to be in Mexico, doesn't have to be in Latin America. You know, it's like death doesn't have to be so scary. Birth is beautiful, right?
Mhm.
People come from nowhere and then they're born. Well, after they die, they go to nowhere and we can remember them still. That's beautiful.
Yeah, the concept of intentionally creating a space that is also for the living. And yeah, you mentioned also like humor before and how Mexicans have such a great sense of humor. And I find that, yeah, that humor is brought into every aspect of like the funerals and the wake and um yeah, visiting grave sites and yeah.
And it doesn't mean people aren't sad when people die. I mean,
Mhm.
death does not have to be sad. It's just the end of your adventure.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't have to be sad and it can be sad and not only be sad. It can be sad and, you know? Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I think there's something lovely about, like, um, I don't know, like, it feels like more of a fluidity down here south of the border than what, my experience of, like, yeah, I don't know, energy or whatever you would call it in the US. Yeah, it's like it can be sad and we can make jokes. It can be sad and we can laugh and, yeah, have good memories and yeah,
Yeah. It's just
yeah,
life.
mhm, yeah, yeah. So you're thinking about perhaps, an intentional community or a land use that involves more people as a way of, yeah, just getting more people involved in the land so that maybe there's a succession plan attached to that, more people involved. Have you done a lot of thought about, yeah, just like what aging in place could potentially look like when you are living in a rural area that's I mean, where I am like, for example, like, it's 2.5 hours to the closest hospital, you know? This is something that people worry about a lot when it comes to aging in place.
Yeah. No, I have thought a lot about that. Um, I've thought about hospice care and I've thought about retirement communities where you have a nice, safe, quiet space to be and you don't have to worry about a lot of stuff. And there's a supply chain to make it easy for you to get stuff. So you have to go drive around getting stuff. Because eventually our bodies do get more difficult to deal with. So, yeah, I've thought about every stage of it. There's I'll go to the other end of it. There is a training center near me for midwives,
Mm.
and that's really cool, actually. That's a great program. And there's a partner of a friend of mine who wants to set up a space for women to come before and after birth to relax and be in nature. And so all the way from cradle to grave, if you're going to think about community, you have to think about it all. And, you got to think about how to raise the children well in a protected space where there have so many educational options and, spaces for teenagers to rebel against you in a semi-controlled way so they don't do too much stupid shit. And then economic opportunities for younger people and remote work. Remote work is the best way to make money in Mexico, you know, and then how we can plant gardens to feed us and be self-sustainable to some degree. Of course, we won't be completely. And then as we age, how can we kind of solidify what we've given to life? And then as we get even older, how do we deal with the difficulties, and can we design a community where you can have mobility, get around? And then, of course, there's the end. And, hospice is that, where we don't want to end up in a hospital. At least I don't want to end up in a hospital full of tubes. There is a time to go. And I want that to be easy for me. And then I'm gone.
Yeah, I found that overwhelmingly the people that I've spoken to that live in Mexico, the people I speak to about dying in Mexico, yeah, overwhelmingly, um, they're super aware of wanting to have keep a sense of agency about all the way to the very, very end, and not wanting to be in a hospital, and not wanting to be connected to tubes, and not wanting to have decisions stripped away from them, so to speak.
Yes.
So there's yeah,
You own you. You
yeah,
own your life. And you don't want other people telling you how that ends.
yeah. And so maybe this is a good place to ask about. So everywhere in Mexico, this concept of what's in some places in the US they call death with dignity. This concept of assisted dying is illegal everywhere in Mexico. Um, you mentioned that this is something that you think about a little bit. Do you wanna talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Uh, I haven't heard the term assisted dying. I usually use the word assisted suicide, which probably sounds a little more negative to people. So maybe assisted dying sounds better. Um, but I think it does come down to a control issue of, do you own your life, and do you get to decide how you check out? And I would like to decide how I check out. And in fact, I'm going to, whether it's legal or not.
Mhm.
I'll be in charge of that shit. My life, my body, my life. So my death. And I would like to do that, of course, in a way that doesn't upset other people. I know that dying is very sensitive for people, and I don't, you know, I mean, I'll be dead, so what do I care? But I do care about people. I care about the feelings of people and stuff, and I would prefer it if it be legal, and I would like that to have medical options. I mean, I can always just blow my brains out. You can't stop me. But that's not very nice, is it? It's very messy and inconvenient, and upsets people. It sounds angry to people. And so, taking some pills or something, and checking out with medical help to make sure I don't mess it up would be probably a better idea. In other words, you might as well just legalize it. And I understand that it's controversial and upsetting to people. It's probably not something that the church would support.
Mm,
And that is an issue because the church is powerful among some people. But nobody else owns me. So you can either make me do it the ugly way, or I'll find a way to do it in a more comfortable way. But I choose.
mhm. Yeah, yeah, it's not pretty, to end things with a firearm at end of life, but at least as I'm aware, like, in my rural area, the hard truth is that I mean, not a lot, but a few people do this, because they don't wanna be a burden to their family, because they're in a lot of pain. There's not good, easy access to pain medication for end of life in Mexico, um, which makes me, uh, yeah, think a little bit about, like, the reality of, "Oh, if I wanna do this with medication, how difficult is even that?" Um And it occurs to me too, if you've heard about this, VSED, the voluntarily stopping eating and drinking, and if that is something you ever thought about or an option, or if that differs for you from assisted suicide. VSED, it's the VSEAD or VSED. Um, so it's yeah, it's like an acronym that stands for voluntarily stopping eating and drinking. Um, and I don't think it's widely talked about, but this is a legal option for everyone at end of life. And yeah, at some point you just decide, I do not want to be fed. I'm not going to take in any more food or any liquids. Um, and then depending on your condition, you know, a day, 2 days, 14 days, you're no longer with us.
Well, that does seem a little inconvenient. I mean, I understand why people would do it in a place where easier options were not available. And that's very kind of actually studly of them to make that choice. But I think there should be easier options than that. But if that's what people got to do, because the fucking state says that they don't have an easier option, fine. But
Yeah, and it's complicated. You mentioned like for you personally, like maybe control is an important part of this.
absolutely.
And so it's like the question becomes, at what point do we lose control at end of life? And that's really complicated, like where to draw that line, especially if, you know, if there's any cognitive decline,
Yeah, what was incapacitated? What if I was with dementia?
Mhm.
I don't know the answer to that. If you're no longer functional, at what point do people pull the plug, right? And I do need to write that up because if I'm not functional anymore and I'm not, and I don't want there to be a lot of expenses, like medical expenses at the end of my life that I don't even have money to pay anyway, just pull the fucking plug. I mean, I'll write that down and whatever. What's the name of that document?
A living will in Mexico,
Well,
yeah, voluntad anticipada. Okay, yeah.
yeah. I mean, if I'm not working anymore, then don't keep me working. Why bother? Right? I think that people just have a fear of death.
Mhm.
I think they're afraid to die, which we are evolved to have that fear. It's totally reasonable. We want to stay alive at all costs. Otherwise, we don't reproduce. And so we must stay alive to reproduce. We're evolved to reproduce. But rationally speaking, there's not like exactly a shortage of humans in the world. I don't, if I'm not having fun anymore, then check me out.
Mhm.
And I've raised a lot of dogs. And this may seem like a stretch or a different topic, but it really isn't because it deals with the same exact issues as we deal with humans. I have had up to 12 dogs here. That's my highest number of dogs I've had at one time. And I've been here for 21 years. So that means I've seen a lot of dog death. And some of it hasn't been pretty, but there have been times where a dog gets old enough that I remember my first one. It's hard to talk about,
Mhm.
but she was just the sweetest dog. And I hired two veterinarians to come up to visit me and put her to sleep, which also means kill her. I'm not big on euphemisms. Um, and when I carried her up to the orchard, I could feel that her body was kind of just falling apart in my arms. And she looked at me and she was no fear. She knew it was time. I mean, it was just like she was done,
Mhm.
and she had become not active um, and the vets were great. I took her up there. Sorry. I took her up there and they injected her with the first injection to just have her go to sleep. And then they injected her with something that killed her. And I don't feel bad about that at all. I was doing her a service of saving her from, maybe I could have kept her alive another 6 months, maybe even a year. But she was suffering. And I don't ever want to suffer like that.
Yeah. Yeah, no need to be sorry. I have a 14-and-a-half-year-old dog myself, and I think about his upcoming death every single day. Um, yeah, yeah. I mean, this is the big question around assisted suicide is like we afford our pets. That's kind of, what a lot of people see as a type of grace at end of life. And why do we not offer this for our fellow human beings? I think this is like probably the primary argument in at least the states in the US, and I think Canada offers this as well, but, um, yeah, and then this question of and at the same time, we don't all suffer at end of life. Yeah, some of us do, but not all of us. Yeah, so you said when I'm not having fun anymore, and I think that's probably the measure, a measure.
Yeah. Well, that's some of my thoughts. Goddamn. Got a horrible story out of me. Well,
Well,
yes, nice job as an interviewer.
well, this is the reality, this is the reality of, yeah,
It is.
uh, talking about on some level of if talking about end of life is not evocative of these emotions, it's like, are we, I would question how much are we really connecting to what we're contemplating or what we're considering, you know? Because yeah, we are wired to want to stay alive. Yeah.
Yeah, we are. Nature of us. It's okay.
Yeah.
And we do miss people. I mean, we don't want them ever to go away,
Mhm.
but we all go away. That's just how it is.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
So how's your book gonna be? What do you want for your book?
Well, I want just this in a way. It's like right now it's like I've got all the technicalities written down, and but I think that it's you know, you and I both, right? We think about these things and we haven't neither one of us has written a will yet. Right? And so and so it's like, we can be handed a checklist and told to do all of these things, but I think it's like the real stories and like connect, yeah, I just want as much as possible to be sharing real stories of people that are living in Mexico and the good, the bad, the ugly, the ways in which people are thinking about this, what are people doing to get prepared, to get ready. Um, yeah, and I think, yeah, there's a lot of parts of this that will resonate with people maybe far more than you might expect. Yeah.
I think they need it.
Yeah.
And I've been here long enough and a lot of people that move to Mexico are pretty old. And so they're gonna die here. They're retiring here, right? And so they're gonna be here when they think about it. And I did hear a rumor. Some guy told me that if you die here, then somehow the consulate takes over and they ship your body back to US and stuff. And I don't know, shipping bodies around seems really inconvenient to me. I don't even really like embalming. Embalming seems really weird. Like that's kind of Frankenstein weird shit. Like taking your blood out and putting weird chemicals in it and then shipping your body off to somewhere else where you weren't even living. And I'm just like, just, you know, stick me in the ground. I'm fine. But if you don't have control over that part, and this should probably be in your book, is that you have to direct them what to do with your body. Otherwise, they will do weird shit like fly it somewhere.
Mm.
Like I don't even
So,
get on planes when I'm alive, you know.
so actually, yeah, it's good that you bring that up because the question always comes like who's paying for this, right? And so uh yeah, I think planning in general, I mean, there's many ways to take control, so to speak, over end of life and what happens to your body when you're gone, and just planning is one of them. Yeah, if you're or at least if you're from the US and you die in Mexico, they will not automatically embalm you and ship you back to the US because somebody has to pay for that. And if you have no next of kin who are wanting to pay for that, yeah, there's just the common grave, the common grave in Mexico. I mean, yeah, and we know there's a lot of poverty in Mexico, and so not everybody has like the luxury of, uh, yeah, paying for funeral homes and even graves and all of that stuff. But yeah, and so on. Yeah, I think with for people who come here from the U.S., cremation is a popular option. But I think if you're really for all the reasons, at least for me personally, for all the reasons why embalming um, doesn't feel like an environmentally friendly thing to do, cremation is not so much better. Um, so yeah, like these are all just like
It's not totally bad. I mean, it uses a
yeah,
little bit of
yeah,
fuel, but it's not as bad as embalming
yeah,
and then flying bodies around. So
yeah,
cremation, I certainly understand some criticisms of it, but it's not as bad as many things. And so,
yeah. But I'm encouraged by your exploration into this private cemetery idea. I'm encouraged about your exploration into like, yeah, as a steward of the land, how does that relate to, yeah, what happens to this place when I die? What happens to me when I die? And yeah, all of it. So thank you.
well, I've always been a friend of death. You know, I I've had a lot of near death experiences because I've had a really weird life and strange things have occurred to me. And so I'm okay with it. It's like it'll happen. I'm ready. Not today, preferably. I still haven't made a will. And it's really funny you're writing a book about it and you haven't made a will either.
I know.
Really hilarious. I find that very funny. But maybe that's why you're writing the book. Maybe you're preparing for death yourself in your own way by writing a book.
Exactly. I would say I definitely am. And yeah, maybe this is what I need to get the will started. I will write the will and report on it in the book.
And do you own your own land in Baja or do you rent?
I do. Yeah, here we have the fideicomiso, so you do own your own land, even though it's held
Right.
in bank trust.
Through a trust, yeah.
Yeah, and these are, I am in a beautiful place that's relatively wild and, you know, yeah, it's like, is it, uh is it arrogant of me in a way to like really want to keep it that way? You know what I mean? I mean, just because I don't, not that I'm, just because I, like for me personally, it's just such a small little tiny parcel of, what's important to me, you know? Um, and so sometimes I'm like, well, who am I to say, like, how is this little corner of the world, you know, supposed to remain after I'm gone? I think I would not have those same questions if I was stewarding a forest, you know? Like, but yeah, it's, I think everywhere, most places in Mexico where people from the US are gonna find themselves, like, I don't know if they haven't already been built up to like, every square inch of it covered with buildings and properties. Like, yeah, it's a question, like, can I keep some open space here? Yeah.
No, I think that's great. I mean, you feel emotionally attached to the land.
Yes.
I think that matters a lot. Even if it's a small piece of land, you care.
Mhm.
We
Yeah.
all have to care for the land. That's how we survive. That's how we're not going to go extinct. I mean, society will probably still collapse. We'll probably all go extinct anyway. But the attempt at saving the world is noble.
Mhm.
And that's what we can do while we're alive.
Should we end it there?
Well, we've covered quite a bit. I
We've
think there
covered
gives
quite a
you
bit.
people things to think about, you know, and it will help a lot of people because more and more people are moving to Mexico, more and more foreigners, and they're confused. And there's lots of land scams out there waiting for them. They should avoid those. There's just so many, it's ridiculous. And so I hope that they don't lose their nest egg in Mexico. I hope that they find a community to invest in and that they find a land that they fall in love with.
I hope so too. Yeah. A community and a land they fall in love with. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much. These are important topics. A lot of people are a little bit hesitant to think about, but I don't think we should be shy. And I'm glad you're not shy about it. I'm glad you're taking it on head on and writing a book about it. You're going to help a lot of people with it.
Well, I hope so. Yeah. Yeah, and thank you. Like, yeah, I think these conversations, yeah, every time I open a conversation on this, it really, I don't know why it still surprises me, but it surprises me how willing people are to talk about this, and it's like they've just been waiting for the invitation, you know? So, yeah, hope to invite people to keep the conversation going. I hope you find the exact right plan for your land and your community going forward, and I hope it flourishes.
Yeah. And if I do ever make a really cool cemetery, it'll be the best cemetery in the world.
I bet. I bet.